one more thing. What is
Yeah,
something that shocks most owners when they finally see their real numbers?
they're not as profitable as they thought they were. That's one for me. I mean, at one point when I learned that, I'm like, oh my God, I thought I was doing really good because the bills are paid, right? But that doesn't mean anything.
Welcome back to Pest Radio, the podcast where we talk with the leaders shaping the future of pest control and wildlife industries, from business and growth to marketing, mindset, and the real stories behind the people in this field. I'm Faye Cebioglu from Digital Karma, a digital marketing agency helping pest control and home service companies grow through SEO, Google Ads, websites, automation, and AI-driven marketing. Our mission is simple: help good companies grow with smart, honest, and trackable marketing. Today's episode is one I have been really looking forward to because we are diving into something every pest control owner needs to understand, but very few actually do: their numbers. I'm joined by Emilio Polce, former owner of EcoChoice Termite and Pest Control, which is successfully sold to Anti-Cymex. Today, he works closely with pest control companies through Launch Business Services LLC, helping them understand their true cost, profitability, and how to build a healthier business. And Emilio, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Let's start from the beginning. How did you get into the pest control industry?
By chance, in 2001, I saw an ad for one of the large companies, and it in the ad it said you get a company car. My car was dying. I worked for
Okay.
I was a manager at the Marriott, and I'm like, you know what? Let me try it. Maybe I can kill two birds with one stone, get a new job and get
You
a
will have a
car
new
at the
car.
same time.
Okay, fair. So you didn't always see yourself in this business, so and it happened unexpectedly.
I had no idea what pest control was. I owned a house, and I remember finding these bugs in my garden all the time, and I had
Hmm.
no idea what they were. Fast forward, 5 months later, I'm in the training program at Terminex. They were all
Hmm.
over my garden, eating my tomato steaks, eating the wood retaining wall. At the time, it was hilarious because here I am, not knowing what they were. 5 months later, I'm like, oh my God, I'm infested with termites.
So what was that early phase like when you were first starting out in pest control industry? So it has already been like almost, no, 25 years, right?
2001.
Okay.
In
So how was it at the
2001.
early phase?
It was, in the very beginning, there was a lot to learn. I had no industry experience. I was in the branch manager training program, so I had to learn how to be a technician, how to be
Hmm.
a service manager, sales manager, branch manager. Yeah, there's a lot of travel for
Hmm.
meetings and, something I wasn't accustomed to. So that was new and it was exciting as well. It was a great career. It was professional. It wasn't what I had thought, right? Back then I thought, pest control was, toothless old men and it wasn't. They were very professional, college educated, you know,
Hmm.
thoughtful thinkers and, it was definitely a professional business to be in.
Let's talk about when you decided to go on your own. And when did you start your own pest control company, EcoChoice Termite and Pest Control? And what made you decide to start your own business at that point?
I started in February of 2010 in the middle of a
Hmm.
recession, but I was pretty passionate about it. I felt I could do a better job. I wasn't, I work for the two largest companies in the world, and a lot of times, there's a disconnect between the culture and the vision where a corporate office is, and the further you get away from corporate office, it's always going to get a little watered down. I struggled with that, so I decided, what, I can do better. Let me go out on my own, and I was in for a big surprise.
What were those early days like when you were building it? At what point did, things start to click for you as a business owner?
It was horrible. I went from making a great salary, right? Great salary, benefits, company car, to a pickup truck, no money, no income. Um, took a part-time job with a pest control company until my phone rang.
Uh,
I went from all the comforts to being on welfare, getting WIC because I had young children.
so you get out of
Um,
your comfort zone.
I did. It was a rude awakening, right? I had no idea, but I learned a lot, right? I learned a lot about myself and my drive, and there were a lot of valuable lessons that I was able to pass on to my kids. My first year, I blew my knee.
Hmm.
So September through November, I was on crutches.
I
Never
know
know
how it feels.
how
Yeah.
resourceful you are until you're put in that situation. So, I sell a 32 unit apartment building that's loaded with bed bugs. And
Hmm.
I'm like, I know I can do this, but I'm on crutches. So, day one, I do like 5 units. I get home and I got bed bugs on me. My wife at the time is freaking out, so I have to unrobe, get everything in the dryer, and then the next day I'm like, I just can't do this. So I ended up reaching out to old technicians that work for me that would, I'll pay you to help me through this apartment complex. I'll pay you by the hour, after hours, and that's how and that's how I
So,
did it. And same thing with termite jobs. I would hire somebody to help me because I was trenching and drilling with crutches. It became very cumbersome.
so your previous experience at the corporate life helped you
Soft.
to get through it,
It
right?
did, yes, right.
Yeah.
It was
Good.
my determination. When your back's against the wall, that's when you find out what your true character is. You can either cave or you can overcome. And for me, failure wasn't an option. Right? There's only keep going one step in front of the other. And I had a lot of obstacles those first couple of years. And then that winter, after I had surgery, that winter was our worst winter in Connecticut in like 50 years. We had over 100 inches of snow. Whatever customers I had, no one wanted service.
Like
And
this
then
year, that cold?
worse than this past winter. I remember looking out my front window to my house and I see a pickup truck pull up across the street and they start shoveling the neighbor's roof, right? And then it dawned on me. I'm scared of heights, but we're not
Hmm.
able to, if I don't get out there and work, we're not going to eat. So I started calling the customers. I realize you don't want pest service, but there's such thing as ice dams. I can shovel your roof. And I started with ranches because I'm scared of heights. And then I was getting calls from other customers and neighbors. I had to overcome my fear of heights, and that's how I made it through that first winter.
So, what were some key decisions that really moved the needle in growing the company?
So my first beginnings in pest control, we did a lot of termite work with the company that I did. So I decided, let me. It's more money than pest control. Let
Yeah,
me
it's
get
more
out there.
costly, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So I would go to realtor conventions. I went to the local ones and I set up a booth. I had some signs made up. I just started interacting with realtors and whatever their termite guy was charging, I would beat it. I'd beat their price.
Can we say
Um,
when we get out of our comfort zone, we become really creative?
yes, we do, right? We do, right? Because now instead of
Yeah.
obstacles, you see opportunities,
Yeah.
right? And that was a huge opportunity. And I ran that wave for a good 5 years, 6 years, actually more. It wasn't until I got into the ELP program that I realized that I was leaving a lot of money on the table. Yes, I was making money, but I didn't have the
Hmm.
reoccurring revenue that my classmates had
Hmm.
because I was one dimensional. I'd rather
So,
do a termite job than sell a pest control job.
so you sold your company to Anticimex. How did that opportunity come about, and what made you decide it was the right time to sell?
So I used the OST group, and I had met Stuart Ost when I was in the ELP program, and we became friendly. And initially, it was just to what's my company worth? All right. How much longer do I need to do this? Because at that time, I knew none of my children wanted to take over my company. None of them wanted to be in pest control. So it started off as just an inquiry. And then as time went on, my marriage was falling apart. And I'm like, I need to make a decision. And the decision was let me sell, get as much money as I can,
Hmm.
and I'll take the time off and not work and spend time with my kids to get them through that process. And that was a decision that I made. And I
And
think I made the right decision because my kids are in a really good place right now.
And how was the transition, and what did that transition teach you?
That I did a lot of things right, even though I thought they were wrong. But, there was a lot of things that I did right after ELP. I restructured my
Let's
company.
talk about a little bit of ELP. So ELP is, if our listeners don't know what ELP is, National Pest Management Executive Leadership Program.
It is,
And you are
yeah,
one of the first graduates,
right.
right?
I was in the first class,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still friends with all my classmates. And it's probably the greatest decision I ever made. I never thought I was worthy. I learned so much about pest control business from my classmates. It
I'm
was,
planning to join next year too.
good. I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm
listen,
looking forward to it.
I'm still friends with my classmates, and when I have questions, I have no problem reaching out to them. I'm amazed at the success they all. Mike Bullard was my classmate. He's going to be the next NPM president of NPMA. Extremely proud of Mike, and it transformed. They showed me how I was doing everything. I was termite driven, right, and
Mhm.
recurring revenue was secondary because I made a lot of profit, right. So I transitioned into selling more quarterly pest controls, more programs, stop chasing checks, monthly
Mhm.
payment, credit card only. I'll take a check for a year in advance. So, I had a set of customers that had been with me a long time, and I left them the way they were, but anyone knew it was either, it's either we get a credit card on file or we're not doing business. Or you give me a check for the year in advance, and once that check clears, we'll start because I used to chase money all the time.
I
And
know
that
the
and that
feeling.
really
Yeah.
and that really it was a game changer.
Bothering. Yeah,
But it was a
yeah.
game changer because we just continued, and I would get referrals, and I would pay them for the referrals. I'd give them a $25 Visa card for any neighbor or friend that you refer us to, and they get on a reoccurring program. It was, and all that I learned from my classmates.
I see. And after that, you didn't just step away. You started helping others. So after exiting your business, when did you found Launch Business Services LLC, and what inspired you to start it?
So I started Launch in 2024, right after I graduated. Another,
ELP?
and no, ELP, I graduated in 2018. I was also in the first leader launch class that I graduated in 2024. So after I graduated, the leader launch is also a course. And I was fortunate enough to be in that first class. So I opened my consulting business, but I really didn't have any customers, and I wasn't really looking because I was still working on my kids and myself, right? There was a massive change going from being married with 5 kids to now, only having my kids 4 days a week. And there was that transition. So 2025 is when I really started working with some smaller
Customers?
companies.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because a lot of smaller companies don't really understand. All they know is they know how to kill bugs. They have the gift of gab. They can sell customers, but are they pricing themselves properly? Do they know what it costs to put a truck in the driveway? Do they really know how much it costs to service a customer? Do they know how much it costs to gain a customer? And a lot of the ones that I were talking to, even the ones that I have now, they didn't have those answers. So then my next question is how do you know if you're making money? How it's
Do you
just a
have your
transfer,
numbers? Yeah.
right? And that,
So,
numbers I did learn when I was at the big companies because I had a P&L, I had to be,
mhm.
I was responsible for.
Can we say, like, everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, especially young people. But being an entrepreneur is like also using the experience you get from corporate life, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. And the connections you make and the people you talk to.
During you were working for a connection you make, you just gave a great example. So you blow your knee, and then who help you? The people you used to
Former
know from your,
employees,
yeah, former
former
employees.
employees, they would come after work. And
So what kind of companies do you typically work with? And what problems are they usually trying to solve when they come to you?
so I have a couple of companies that mainly I work with them on developing their leaders, developing their service managers, developing branch managers. Something I really like doing.
Hmm.
Sir, I like servant leadership because I think it's very effective. And then I have other clients that I need to help them, or I need to have them get with their accountant and restructure their chart of accounts so their chart of accounts is proper. So we have a true cost, to put a truck in the driveway, and a true cost to gain a customer. You need that information. You really need to know in order to, because that's going to dictate your pricing.
And one of your main focuses is helping owners understand, like we mentioned together, their numbers, cost per customer and revenue per customer. And why is this such a big gap in the industry?
I think most of the larger companies know that.
Yeah, larger
Yeah.
companies, yes, but
Well,
you
I mean,
know,
most of, if you've gotten to, if you're doing a million recurring revenue, you probably already know the answer to those questions.
do you really believe in that? That
I
every
do.
small company who is making 1 million yearly revenue and really has
No,
an idea?
reoccurring customers. If you have that many customers,
I
at
know
some
some
point,
companies, they don't even use softwares.
wow, okay.
So
So
you don't think that this is such a big gap in the industry?
I think, that there's a lot of smaller companies that really don't know their
Hmm.
numbers, right?
Hmm.
And I think most of the larger companies have. I do. I think that, once you hit that million mark of reoccurring revenue, you got, two, three, 4,000 customers.
Hmm.
When you get to that point, you have to know, because you need to reach out to industry experts, right?
Hmm.
And do. Most people will get a, I don't want to name names, but we'll get a Dan Gordon or Fraxton, or they'll get that specialize in pest control,
Hmm.
right? And keep them on the right track.
So what is the biggest mistake you see when it comes to pricing and profitability?
Well, first you need to know what it costs you to put a truck in the driveway, right? You need to know what it
Mm.
costs to service a customer. And then you need to know what it costs you to gain that customer, right? You need
Hmm.
to, once you get those two together, and if you do a quarterly service, now you know for the first year it's going to cost me this. Year two is going to cost me a little less, and then and then you just need to retain them, right? You need to retain them.
Yeah,
That comes in with company culture
yeah, company culture is very important, but it's mostly how do I say, underrated.
by some, right? By some, and by others, they live by it. Companies that have good retention, you can tell by their culture. And it's right that their culture is intentional, right? They understand that if they constantly have turnover in technicians, right,
Yes, that's
right,
what I was
they're
gonna
not going to
say.
have they're not going
Retention,
to have
yeah,
great customer retention, right? It
yeah.
goes hand in hand, and the better you treat as a leader, right, as an owner, the better you treat your team, the better they're going to treat your customers, right? So, leadership, which is why it's one of my passions, teaching leadership, because that's where, you lose great people.
Mhm.
You find a great person, and then they end up leaving you, end up wondering why. Somewhere along the line, they were mistreated and they just never said anything, because a lot of
If
people don't like conflict.
yeah, they don't. So if a pest control owner is listening right now, how should they start thinking about cost to service a customer and lifetime value?
One, they need to
And
know,
one more thing, what is
yeah,
something that shocks most owners when they finally see their real numbers?
they're not as profitable as they thought they were.
Mm.
That's one for me. I mean, at one point when I learned that, I'm like, oh my god, I thought I
I'm
was
not
doing,
making money. Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
thought I was doing really good because the bills are paid, right? But that doesn't mean anything. What was the second part of that question?
Actually, second part was what is something that shocks most owners, and you just replied that. And
Okay.
if a pest control owner is listening right now, and how should they start thinking about cost to service the customer and lifetime value? How should they start thinking about it?
Get with your accountant, make sure that your charter accounts is the way they should be set up. So you get a true cost of goods sold, and true value from what it costs you to gain a customer. And then you need to make sure that you're pricing properly. And you need to start looking at customer retention. Right. For me, that was, a deal breaker. I was really big on making sure that we retained our customers. So like my average customer stayed with me 7 years. So I was a little cheaper, but I made more money in the long run.
I see. So 7 years is long, by the way.
It is. It
It
is.
is,
Like
yeah.
when I worked at the larger companies, the average was like 2.5 years.
I'm always trying to, explain this at my webinars, especially for, marketing campaigns. So once you gain a new customer, and if you are doing a good job, so your marketing investment, triples, doubles, triples, 10 times more return on investment because first you have quarterly, then yearly contracts. And if you are doing a great job, that means these customers will be together with you for a long time, for years.
Yes. But that starts here at the top, right?
Yeah.
Right? The owner sets the tone. The owner creates the culture. And it should be an inclusive culture, not just that, he's not the king. You just happen to be, the person that had the courage to open up the company, but you have a team around you that you need to develop, and then that trickles down. You need to be a leader people want to follow. Right? And then you want to develop them to develop people underneath them, right? So it's a constant flow.
How does this connect to marketing and lead quality, in your opinion?
What was the question?
How does this connect to marketing and lead quality, in your opinion?
It depends. I mean, if you market the fact that we're a family-owned, culture-driven company, that should be part of your marketing
Local,
campaign. When I
also local community.
yes, so one of the company that I used for about 7 years, would create videos. Why choose us? It was like a 30-second video that it would, we had it on YouTube and it was on our website, and it went through. Like we had at that time, we had a combined total of 70 years pest control experience. Though they highlighted a lot of things that were positive, and it wasn't just that. It was about our culture and our core values and what we stood for and what we believed in.
So do
Because
you think?
at the end of the day, right,
Mhm.
we all shop and eat where our customers eat. We should be pillars of our community.
Yeah, I agree with you. And do you think most pest control companies are growing the right way? And also, why do you see people chasing revenue but actually hurting their profitability? I think this is your real
And if they're chasing revenue
expertise.
and they're not profitable, then they're not charging enough, right? Because they don't really know their costs. They're just, and it depends. So, like, if you have a door knocking company, they're not going to be profitable in the beginning. They make their profit in the back end because it's very expensive, but they grow very, very fast. Does that make sense? They can go from zero to, 3, 4, 5 million in a very short period of time versus doing traditional. Like I did traditional website, marketing campaigns, email blasts, all that, So it's a little slower, but it's steadier.
So you're saying you have seen companies grow fast but struggle financially?
I have seen some, but and the ones that I have seen that did it traditionally, they just didn't know their numbers. They
I
looked at
see.
revenue, right? They looked at revenue and that's it. They didn't look at retention. They didn't know what it cost them to put a truck in driveway. Were they underpriced? Were they? I'll give you an example. If it cost you $300 to gain a customer, right,
Hmm.
and it cost you $50 to service them, and your initial service is spread out over two services. So right now you're into them for $400. And if they cancel after the initial service, and if you are giving it away, right? Like some companies are out there $59 a month, no initial. If it costs you $400 and you
And
only
it
got
also
$59 and they cancel, you just lost money.
and it also affects all industry norms.
They can. They can, but that would be more of a larger company. I don't think smaller companies are going to have that much of a splash.
So based on your work at Launch Business Services LLC, what are two, three quick changes a small operator or small businesses can make to become more profitable? And yeah, and what is one number every pest control owner must know, but most of them don't?
Mm. So we already talked. You need to know what it costs to put a truck in the driveway, right?
Yes.
You got to know retention. You
Okay.
have to, right? You have to know retention's your best friend.
Well, what
If
are the two, three quick changes you would implement immediately when you start working for a small operator, a small pest control company?
well, the first thing that I would do is we look at our numbers, make sure that they're
Hmm.
profitable. right? And if they're not, then we need to raise prices. We need to do something from there. And then from there, I need to look at the culture of the company, how they treat their employees. Is constant turnover because the owner tries to do too much and gets frustrated and doesn't teach, doesn't have clarity. The biggest thing I see in a lot of small companies, and listen, in a lot of large companies too, there's not enough clarity, right? They have so much in their head and they're moving so fast that they get frustrated because they only gave partial instructions instead of full instructions.
Hmm.
Because because we make assumptions as humans that, oh, you know what I'm talking about, and then you want
We
them to
love
go do it,
assumptions.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then when you
We
go
love
inspect
assumptions.
what you expect, you're like, oh my god, this is not what I told you to do. But yeah, you did, boss. No, oh no, I didn't. But you did, right? Because you made assumptions. You didn't take the time to be crystal clear, so they truly understood, right? And sometimes when we're in a hurry, we could be a little standoffish. I was too. I made those mistakes, and then I started taking my time, and instead of getting mad at them, I used to get mad at myself because it's my fault, right? I left out steps, or I left out words, or I left something out that they didn't truly understand what I was talking about. That responsibility is mine, and that responsibility is any leader out there. You own that, right? You own that. It's your function to make sure you communicate properly and make sure your team truly understands, right? The more clarity you get, the more functional your team is going to be, and less hand holding that you need to do.
How important is it for pest control owners to stay connected to the industry? Because
I
we
think
both
it's,
are MPMA members, so we have an idea what it is like to be a real member, attending, all the events and being part of the councils or and also programs. So, what do you think? How important is it?
I think it's extremely important for business owners and their team to not only
Mm-hmm.
not only national but at the state level. You need to be connected because that's where the greatest educations come from. Because you'll get it firsthand from people that are doing it every day, that live it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the one thing about our industry is we like to share, right? We like to
Mm.
share. We like to help others grow.
Isn't it very welcoming?
It is. It
Mm.
is. It's very unique. You don't see like big insurance companies helping each other, or there's not many industries out there that do this. And I learned a lot going to MPMA events and my state events, which is why I've only missed two pest worlds. I've been to every. Since 2015. I missed two pest worlds, and I've been to every legislative day since 2017.
Last week, no, was
Yeah,
it last week? Yeah, it was my first time, and I really, it was a great experience actually.
it is
Yeah.
because and it once you start doing it, you get to start seeing people and make connections, and it's always great to catch up. It's always great, and there's always learning lessons. Always.
Every event, I learn a lot from the industry. It really helps me to understand more of my customers, and some of my customers have no idea about all these events. So I also I feel like I'm the messenger to deliver all the things I learned from
Good, good.
yeah, from the
So
events.
right now in the industry, one of the toughest things that we've been struggling with this for years. We take our best technician and we make him a service manager, and they fail, and then we wonder
Mhm,
why they fail. Oh, he was no good. We don't have a really great concrete service manager development program out there.
mhm,
There's some, right? There are some guys like me out there that are doing some things, but they need to know, service manager needs to know numbers. They need to know the service numbers. They need to know how to lead people. They need to know how to talk to people. They need to be bought in the culture. The owners really need to groom them, and if they don't have the capacity to, they need to reach out and find a consultant that can help them. Whether it be
mhm.
me, whether it be Kevin Lemasters, Phil Cooper. I mean, there's a bunch. Dave Ramsey. These are all people that I look up to. They've been doing it longer than I have, but it's going to save them heartache.
Okay, before I wrap up things, I'm gonna ask you five quick questions,
My
okay?
God.
So
Okay.
let's make it a little bit fun. So one KPI every owner must track. Just one.
Retention. Retention.
Okay. Biggest waste of money in pest control,
Turnover.
turnover,
Uh,
and best investment you have seen.
Investing in your team.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Investing in your,
Elevating
okay.
your team.
All right.
Right. Greatest
Growth or
investment you'll ever make.
okay, growth or profit.
Both.
All right. I was
Right.
expecting like profit, but that surprised me. Okay.
Both. Right. So,
Oh,
there's a thing called the rule of 23.
uh-huh.
Right. The rule of 23 is if you have, any combination of the two, right, you can have 20% profit, 3% growth, which is not really that good, right? Because you want your
Uh-huh.
recurring revenue and your profit to be somewhere. And this is something I learned when I was at Rollins. When I was at Rollins, that's what we looked at, the rule of 23. So if you can get somewhere where you're both in double digits,
Mm-hmm.
right, you're gonna grow and you're gonna be profitable.
Last question. One habit that made you successful.
Talking to my team every day. There wasn't a day that went by that I didn't at least call one of my teammates on the phone. They got to hear my voice. They need to see me, right? They need to
They
know
need
that
to
I care,
feel
that they're not out there, they're not on an island by themselves. They're
and
not just a
they're part
number,
of something like, like
larger
a
than all of us, right?
yeah.
You're an owner, but it's not you. It's we, it's us, right? And it's bigger than all of us together.
Yeah, I believe in that too, It's not about me. It's about all of us, the
Right?
company, the
Right.
culture,
It
what we
is.
deliver to people, trust, everything.
And you know what's neat? You go on Facebook, you go on LinkedIn, and you can see like the great things companies are doing out there,
Mhm.
for team bonding and, and for charity, get involved, do something as a team, it'll pay dividends, man. It'll,
And if someone listening and wants to improve their business starting tomorrow, what is the first step? And how can people also connect with you and or learn more about Launch Business Services LLC?
first thing, I think personally, you need to know your numbers,
Hmm.
right? If you don't know your numbers, you have no clue. You need to make sure that your chart of accounts and they're done properly. And if you don't know, I named a couple that guys that are experts in the industry of making sure that your numbers are in the right place. That's first and foremost. What was the next part? Sorry.
If someone listening wants to reach out or learn more, what is the best way to connect with you or get in touch with Launch Business Services LLC?
Um, so my cell phone is 860-805-8595. My email is the letter L, the letter POLCE @gmail.com. Or they can contact you.
Ah, yeah, they can
And you'll
connect.
send them my way.
Yeah, I'll do that. Don't worry about it. I'm good at these things, so connecting people.
Me too. That's
So
what I do love matchmaking. All right.
I love it actually. And I love how people communicate each other in the industry, connect them or connect me, other people. So yeah, I feel like I'm part of like we just mentioned, something bigger than me and my company.
We all are.
Yeah.
Pretty
And
cool.
yeah, Emilio, thank you so much for joining me today. This was a really valuable conversation, especially, around understanding numbers, profitability, and what actually drives a healthy pest control business. And I really appreciate you taking the time to share all your experience and insights with our audience. And for everyone listening, if there's one thing to take away from this episode, it is this, I guess. Know your numbers because growth without understanding your profitability can actually hold you back. And thanks again for,
They go
yeah,
hand in hand.
culture.
Culture. Hugely
Thank,
important.
yeah, thank
Thanks
you.
again, Faye.
And thanks again for tuning into the Pest Radio. And I'll see you in the next episode.